On July 20th, 1944, the Wolf's Lair in East Prussia stood as both a fortress and a prison, a place where power was absolute, yet danger lurked in every shadow. Deep in the dense forests, this heavily fortified compound was the nerve center of Hitler's war machine, a site shrouded in secrecy and fear. The air was thick with tension, as if the very trees themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to break the silence. Into this world of suspicion and control arrived Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, a decorated officer whose reputation for courage and intelligence preceded him. But beneath his crisp uniform and composed demeanor, Stauffenberg carried a burden far heavier than any medal, a mission that would test the limits of his resolve. Stauffenberg was not acting alone. He was the linchpin of a vast and secretive conspiracy, a network of military officers and civilians who believed that only a bold, decisive act could end the war and save Germany from utter destruction. Their plan was as audacious as it was dangerous: to assassinate Adolf Hitler and seize control of the government. Hidden within Stauffenberg's battered briefcase was a bomb, an unassuming device, yet one with the power to alter the course of history. Every detail had been meticulously prepared, every risk calculated, but the outcome remained uncertain. The fate of millions rested on a few pounds of explosives and a moment of opportunity. As Stauffenberg approached the briefing hut, each step echoed with the weight of destiny. The compound was alive with activity, guards at every corner, officers moving briskly, unaware that history was about to pivot on a knife's edge. With every stride, the tension mounted, his heart pounding in his chest. He forced himself to appear calm, masking the storm of fear and determination raging within. Every glance, every gesture had to be perfect. One slip, one sign of nervousness, and the entire plot would unravel before it even began. Inside the lair, the stakes could not have been higher. Here, surrounded by the architects of war, decisions of life and death were made with chilling detachment. The room was filled with the most powerful men of the Third Reich, each one a potential threat to Stauffenberg's mission. What Stauffenberg was about to attempt required unimaginable bravery. He was risking not only his own life, but the lives of his family and fellow conspirators. Yet in that moment he stood firm, driven by a sense of duty and a hope for a better future. In the heart of the enemy's lair, Stauffenberg was a predator stalking a far more dangerous prey. He carried with him a single desperate strike, one chance to change the world, or to die trying. Beyond the walls of the Wolf's Lair, the world remained oblivious to the drama unfolding. Across continents, people clung to hope, desperate for any sign that the nightmare of war might soon end. In cities and villages, families gathered around radios, their lives hanging in the balance. In that fateful hour, history teetered on the brink. The hands of the clock moved inexorably forward, marking a turning point that would echo through generations. The world, unknowingly, held its breath, waiting for destiny to unfold. By the summer of 1944, the tide of World War II had turned decisively against Nazi Germany. Once feared for its military might, the Third Reich now faced devastation on all fronts. German cities lay in ruins from relentless Allied bombing campaigns, and the morale of both soldiers and civilians was crumbling. The sense of impending defeat was palpable, and the regime's grip on power was beginning to slip. The Allies pressed forward from the west, liberating France and pushing ever closer to Germany's heartland. Meanwhile, the Soviet Red Army surged from the east, reclaiming lost territory and closing in on Berlin. The German military was caught in a vice, squeezed between two unstoppable forces. In this desperate climate, a small but determined resistance movement found the courage to act. These were men and women who risked everything, careers, families, and their lives, to oppose Hitler's tyranny from within. The conspiracy against Hitler had simmered for years, but now, as Germany's defeat seemed inevitable, the plotters unified their efforts. High-ranking officers, civil servants, and even aristocrats joined forces, believing that only bold action could save their country from total destruction. Their plan was codenamed Operation Valkyrie. Originally designed as a contingency to maintain order in case of internal unrest, the conspirators secretly rewrote it as a blueprint for a coup. The reserve army, stationed in Berlin and across Germany, would be the key to seizing control after Hitler's death. Everything hinged on one critical moment: the assassination of Adolf Hitler. Only with the Führer gone could the conspirators hope to rally the military and the nation to their cause. Without Hitler's death, the reserve army would remain loyal to the regime, and the coup would collapse before it began. The stakes could not have been higher. Previous assassination attempts had failed, each one tightening Hitler's security. Now the responsibility fell to Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, a decorated officer, wounded in battle, and fiercely committed to ending Nazi rule. As Chief of Staff to the Reserve Army, Stauffenberg had rare access to Hitler's inner circle. He attended high-level briefings at the Wolf's Lair, the heavily guarded military headquarters in East Prussia. Stauffenberg's mission was clear: plant a bomb during a briefing, assassinate Hitler, and immediately return to Berlin to lead the coup. The fate of Germany, and perhaps the world, rested on his actions. With every detail meticulously planned, the stage was set for one of the most daring and dramatic confrontations in history: the attempt to bring down Hitler from within his own ranks. On the morning of July 20th, 1944, Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg arrived at the heavily guarded Wolf's Lair, Hitler's secret military headquarters deep in the forests of East Prussia. Hidden in his briefcase were two powerful British-made explosives, meticulously prepared for a single daring purpose: to assassinate Adolf Hitler and bring an end to the Nazi regime. Stauffenberg's plan was to detonate both bombs during a high-level military conference. However, just as he began to arm the devices, he was interrupted by an officer summoning him to the meeting. With time running out and under immense pressure, he managed to prime only one of the bombs before hurrying to the conference room. That day, the meeting had been moved from the usual concrete bunker to a wooden barracks, a seemingly minor change that would have major consequences. The wooden walls and open windows would ultimately absorb much of the blast, reducing the bomb's lethal potential. Inside the crowded room, Stauffenberg placed his briefcase, now armed with the explosive, as close to Hitler as possible, right beside the massive oak conference table. Moments later, he excused himself, leaving the room under the pretense of an urgent phone call. At precisely 12:42 p.m., the bomb detonated with a deafening roar, sending a shockwave through the barracks. The explosion tore through the room, shattering windows, splintering wood, and filling the air with smoke and chaos. Believing the blast had surely killed Hitler, Stauffenberg quickly surveyed the devastation before making his escape. Convinced the mission had succeeded, he raced away from the Wolf's Lair, determined to set the next phase of the plot in motion. Using his rank and composure, Stauffenberg bluffed his way past security and boarded a waiting plane, flying back to Berlin. There, he intended to launch Operation Valkyrie, the coup that would seize control of the German government. But fate intervened. Amid the wreckage, Hitler emerged alive, shaken and injured, but very much in command. The assassination attempt had failed by the narrowest of margins. The plan's success was undone by a series of small, unpredictable events: chance, timing, and the quirks of fate. The briefcase had been moved, the room had changed, and history took a different turn. As news of Hitler's survival spread, the fate of the coup and the future of Germany hung in the balance. Hitler's survival was due to chance. The move to the wooden barracks weakened the bomb's effect. The oak table leg shielded Hitler from the blast. Colonel Brandt's casual move of the briefcase sealed the conspiracy's fate. The table leg absorbed the blast, saving Hitler. The conspirators' meticulous plan was undone by random events. History turned on small, unpredictable moments. The war continued. Millions more perished. A wooden table leg changed the course of history. Stauffenberg, believing in success, returned to Berlin. Confusion reigned as reports of Hitler's survival spread. The conspirators hesitated, waiting for confirmation. General Olbricht delayed issuing Valkyrie orders. The plan relied on speed. Hesitation was fatal. Stauffenberg arrived, shocked by inaction, and issued orders. The reserve army mobilized, but it was too late. Goebbels countered, connecting troops to Hitler. The coup collapsed as loyalty to Hitler prevailed. Soldiers turned on the conspirators. The dream of a new Germany ended swiftly. The failed coup led to brutal retribution. In the Bendler Block courtyard, executions began. Stauffenberg and others were shot by firing squad. Hitler's vengeance was swift and merciless. Thousands were arrested, families punished. Show trials were a mockery of justice. Defendants were humiliated and sentenced to death. Executions were cruel, filmed for Hitler's viewing. Nearly 5,000 were executed in the purge. The resistance was annihilated. The regime's grip tightened. The conspirators navigated a political wilderness. Secrecy was their camouflage in a hostile environment. They moved through power corridors, hiding true intentions. Trust was their fragile network, communication their lifeline. Operation Valkyrie was a carefully constructed trap. Timing and decisiveness were crucial. Hesitation after the bombing was fatal. The Nazi state was a ruthless predator. The conspirators' challenge was swift and total. The wilderness consumed them. The July 20th plot is a testament to courage against tyranny. It shows history can be altered by individual choices. A different future was within reach for a few hours. Chance and small details shaped great historical moments. The conspirators' bravery is undeniable. Their failure was in execution, not courage. The legacy is one of moral resistance. They acted against a monstrous regime at great risk. Their story is a powerful example of standing against tyranny.